Love finances the other F word and want to support the show? Become a patron by going to patreon.com/FTOFW. You'll get special features, a shout out on the air, and early releases. Or if you prefer, pick up some merchandise at financestheotherfword.com.
As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, and as wonderful an attorney as I am, please do note that anything said in our show are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Finances the Other F Word, and this week we're talking about the 27 Club. And this was Zoe's idea for a myriad of different reasons. And for those of you out there who are not super familiar with the 27 Club, it is a list of people who have serendipitously, all died at the age of 27. And we have quite an interesting long list of different people. And to be honest with you, when I first started researching this, I could name, about 5 people on the 27 Club. And I honestly thought it was just kind of an anomaly. But then when I really started looking into it, I was like, oh, holy shit. There is actually quite a bit of people. So I'm going to take the really, really, really old school. And Zoe is going to take the more modern people that you have probably found out with. And ironically, she's going to be covering the numbers this episode.
Yeah, as far as I was able. And I hate to correct you on grammar and language and the like, but I wouldn't say that they serendipitously, that means that they by chance in a happy or beneficial way. And I'm sure none of them actually. Well, not necessarily. I'm not sure, but I doubt very much that they
coincidental. Is that the
yes,
the way we're going
yes, with? Because they have researched this, and the research has disproved that there's any kind of reason for the death of these people at the age of 7. It's just age of 7. Sorry, age of.
You know how I hate to correct you, Zoe. It's 27, not 7.
27. If anything, it's more likely due to their high risk lifestyle, but it is a cultural phenomenon. So
always the attorney arguing the point for really no clear reason.
That's what I do. I drink and I know stuff.
Exactly. Like the guy from Game of Thrones, which I never watched, but I love him.
Fantastic show.
Yes, that's what I heard. Marianne is a massive fan. So I will start with the first half of the list, which, to be quite honest with you, is a bunch of people you guys don't know and have never heard of, but there's a couple really good ones in here. I mean, well, I guess good being in the fact that they would be people that you would know. Our very first one starts off back in 1892 with Alexander Levy, who died January 17th, and he was a Brazilian composer. And then what we start seeing is that the 27 Club starts picking up with specific arts, entertainment, and media. So we have a Henry Envelopol, who died December 27th of 1899. And he was a painter in the Fauvism style. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Do you know what that is, Zoe?
I didn't understand how you said it.
It's Fauvism.
No, please enlighten me.
So it was realist painting with very strong colors. And he died from typhus because, of course, we're talking about the 1800s. And again, for those of you who are tuning in now, all these people have died at 27. Okay. Louis Chauvin, he was an American musician during ragtime. He died on March 26th of 1908 from neurosyphilic sclerosis.
He had syphilis. Is that what you're saying?
Which is an infection in the central nervous system of someone who has syphilis. So technically, Zoe, it's not because he had an STD. It was because he had an infection in the central nervous system that was caused because he had syphilis.
So he had an STD. Come on. Tell it like it is.
He had an STD. I got there. The next one we have is Rupert Brooke. Or not, did I say Rupert Brooke? Rupert, I'm going Brooke.
If it's Brooke, don't fix it. If it ain't Brooke, don't fix it.
Rupert Brooke. We're going with Rupert Brooke, who died April 23rd of 1915. He was a poet, and he died from sepsis.
Ooh.
Yeah, which doesn't sound like a really good way to go. And for those of you who don't know what sepsis is, it's when the body's own response to infection damages its own tissues.
It's basically an infection of the blood.
Correct. But one of the things that I did not notice on my journey through the 27 Club is that nobody died of dysentery. And for my 80s baby, you'll get a chuckle out of that because you know what the fuck I'm talking about. I don't think you guys had that over in England, so you're just not part of the jokes, Zoe.
But I do know of which you're talking about, that game, right?
Yes, Oregon Trail. That is correct. We all got, 15 minutes to play it in class on our one computer, and it took 10 minutes to boot up the fucking game. So you really had 5 minutes of playtime. But no dysentery. The next one, and this one I knew immediately, and they actually have a documentary of him on Netflix that I encourage you guys to watch if it's down there, is Robert Leroy Johnson. And he died August 16th in 1938. So Robert Leroy Johnson, there's a whole mythical legend around him. And a lot of you guys have probably heard the story if you don't specifically know the gentleman's name. He only released 2 recordings. One in 1936 and one in 1937. But what happened is that he was trying to make his way into the blues scene. And quite frankly, he sucked. And his guitar skills were shit. And all of a sudden he disappears. And he comes back, sometime later, maybe not, I can't remember the exact time now, maybe like 9 months to 13 months later. And all of a sudden he has amazing blues skills, amazing guitar skills, vocalist, everything. Like he just comes back as a powerhouse. And so around that shot up the legend that he sold his soul to the devil in order to become a fantastic blues musician. And so, like I said, he recorded things in 1936 and 1937 after he was vastly improved on his skills, and nobody knows how he actually came to be that. And legendary blues musicians, specifically British blues musicians like Eric Clapton and Keith Richards and Robert Plant, and then on the American side, Bob Dylan, have all cited him as influences of one of their main influences in music. And so many of Johnson's songs has been covered throughout the years. And of course he has been, his guitar lick style has been lifted, and Keith Richards has mentioned multiple times that he took Johnson's style and kind of just modified it for his own well-being. And for those of you who might remember, sometime in the 1980s, Ralph Macchio did a movie called The Crossroads. And in The Crossroads, I think B.B. King had a cameo, or it was the other blues musician who I can see in my face, but I can't think of his name right now, had a cameo in the movie, which was loosely based on the myth about Robert Leroy Johnson, where he was a guitar player and he goes to the crossroads, sells his soul for the devil, and the Crossroads movie was born. There was also a Crossroads movie, I think, by Britney Spears, which I don't know if that's the same storyline, but I don't know. I mean,
it's Britney, bitch.
And I literally, listeners, only said that so she could say that and get it out of her system. But seriously, if that is still on Netflix, you guys got to watch it. That is some crazy shit. There's a lot of other stuff, and a lot of the recordings that he did didn't make it. So there's just a ton of, mystical stuff around him. Another one we had is Nat Jaffe, who died August 5th of 1945, and he died from complications of high blood pressure, and he was a swing jazz pianist. For those of you who are in love with swing jazz. Jesse Belvin died February 6, 1960. Him and his wife died in a head-on collision car accident after he was performing with Sam Cooke and Jackie Wilson and Marv Johnson. And he did covers of Blues in the Night and The Still of the Night, not the Whitesnake version, but, in the still
of the night.
Right. And of course, Making Whoopee, who Frank Sinatra also covered. I have not heard Belvin's version of Making Whoopee, but I think it's pretty safe to say that I'm going to defer to the Sinatra's version of that. Then we have Rudy Lewis, who died May 20th in 1964 of a drug overdose, who was the vocalist, one of the vocalists in the band, The Drifters, who released the songs Money, Honey, Honey Love, There Goes My Baby, There Goes My Baby. Yeah. Save the Last Dance for Me, and Under the Boardwalk. Under the Boardwalk.
My favorite version of that is by Bruce Willis off his album.
I will put that on the Spotify playlist. I have never heard his version, but I'm telling you, we've talked about this on the show before. When he was in Hudson Hawk, they sang Swinging on a Star, and he had a pretty good voice. I was like, fucking good for you, Bruce, And
when he was in Moonlighting, I just was in love with him. I thought he was fantastic.
I never watched Moonlighting.
It was so funny, Mel.
That's what I heard. And Sybil Shepherd and him supposedly hated each other during the whole show.
Mm-hmm.
But, apparently they made people buy that they were, secretly wanting to do each other. So good on them. Rockin' Robin Roberts died December 22nd of 1967. And he died in a head-on collision car crash also, but it was because they were on the wrong side of a divided highway, and he was the passenger of the vehicle, and he was the original member of the Fabulous Wailers. And the reason why I put him in is because they were based out of Tacoma, Washington, and he released a couple songs, but his most I guess best known song is his cover of Louie Louie. Now, Rockin' Robin.
Louie.
Yep.
That one. Uh-huh.
Yes, that one, not quite as bad, but yes. So Rockin' Robin Roberts was not the one who sang Rockin' Robin. That was Bobby Day. But Bobby Day is the one who gave Rockin' Robin Roberts his nickname. And so for those of you, you have to do yourself a favor. If you Google the album cover for Bobby Day, Rockin' Robin, he's like sitting in a tree with like these owls and all these other kind of birds sitting around him, and it's really kind of bizarre, and I just was cracking up at that. So you guys have to Google that shit. I was like, what the fuck passes for album covers back then? But I guess if anybody's seen any metal or death metal or black metal covers, they would say the same thing. The next one, I only put this in because he was British and because I liked his name. His name is Dicky Pride.
Great name.
I know. Bam, Dicky bitches right here.
Dicky Pride in the house.
Dicky Pride. He died March 26th of 1969 from a drug overdose from sleeping pills. And he was a jag. He was a rock and roll and jazz singer. And unfortunately, he didn't have a lot of success, but he was British. So
that's success enough for me.
Yeah. And you're probably the only one who A, cares, and B, might even remotely know him, but it sounds like you don't. And he passed 69. Brian Jones died July 3rd of 1969. So for those of you who don't know, July 3rd is my birthday. And obviously not July 3rd, 1969. So he died by drowning in a swimming pool, and his autopsy on his death certificate, it was listed as death by misadventure. He was the founder, one of the original co-founders of the Rolling Stones and the band's original frontman, and him and Keith Richards worked together on the style that Keith Richards has said that he has kept throughout his entire career. And he was kicked out of the band. Brian was kicked out of the band in June of 1969, and he died less than a month later. And it was presumed, since he had drug and alcohol problems, that he probably drowned because of something related to that. And he is an important tie-in to one of the other 27 members that we will talk about here in a second. And Brian Jones and him have kind of a weird connection. The next one is Alan Blind Owl Wilson, who died September 3rd, 1970 from a drug overdose or possible suicide. He was the lead singer and composer of the band Canned Heat. And the reason why I included them is because they played at Woodstock And I have heard the title Canned Heat, but I don't really know any of their stuff. Apparently, their two biggest hits were Going Up the Country and On the Road Again, but it is not the Willie Nelson version. Number 13, everybody knows this one, Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix passed on November 27th of 1942 from asphyxiation, and he was born in Seattle, Washington. And he started out on the Chitlin circuit, which I'm sure most people know. Obviously, he played at Woodstock, and the founder of the Experience Music Project out of Seattle was a big fan of Jimi Hendrix. And of course, when people think of Jimi Hendrix, they think of a couple things. He was supposed to have a huge dick. That's
I didn't know that.
That's true. Yes, there is a documentary on Netflix. There was a groupie, and I can't remember her name now, who was famous for going around and making casts of erect penises of famous musicians, which I'm like, how the fuck did I not get in that racket? That's amazing. And she was asked on camera who had the biggest dick, and she said Jimi Hendrix. So he was supposedly supposed to have a huge wang. He was also said to be a mean drunk. And a lot of times when people think of Jimi Hendrix, they think of him, putting lighter fluid on his guitar and, kind of trying to encourage the flames to get higher. But that actually wasn't at Woodstock. That was at the Monterey Pop Festival. And on his last day of life, he was with one of his girlfriends, Monica Damien. And basically she dropped him off at a friend's house, then picked him back up from the friend's house. They talked till 7 a.m. Then they both went to bed. She said when she got up at 11 a.m. in the morning, he was found unconscious, but breathing. Then he was transported to the hospital where he later died. But the postmortem said that he had choked on his own vomit while he was high on barbiturates. So my question is you're unconscious, but breathing, then you get transported to the hospital and you die. How would they not go, oh, maybe we should fucking check his neck to see if there's something stuck? I mean, that just didn't make any sense to me. And I'm not a huge historian on Jimi Hendrix by any means. So if there's listeners out there who want to shed some light on it, please let me know. And we're going to give you a shout out on the air, because that just didn't make any sense to me. Have you ever heard about that, Zoe?
No.
Yeah, I that just doesn't make any sense to me. Unconscious, but breathing. And then you go to the hospital and you die. What the fuck? Janice Joplin, of course, everybody knows, died October 4th of 1970, drug overdose, blues vocalist and rock and roll icon. She was the lead singer for the Big Brother and the Holding Company. And for those of you who have listened to or watched on YouTube, which you got to watch this one on YouTube, episode number 318, where we interviewed diehard Beatles collector Ruben V. One of the things that he said on there is that the whole way that the Beatles album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club came about is because they thought it was hilarious that all of these American bands had these really long fucking names, like Big Brother and the Holding Company. But of course, she was known for Piece of My Heart, Cry Baby, Down on Me, Ball and Chain, Summertime, which is a great fucking song. So kind of just bluesy, and Mercedes-Benz. But the song that I will always remember her for is Me and Bobby McGee, not because I like that song, and which was a cover, by the way, but because I remember one of the first times when I turned 21, I went to karaoke. I fucking hate karaoke. I fucking hate it. But I was there to listen to people. There was a girl who got up and the little screen says Me and Bobby McGee, Janice Joplin. And I'm like, oh, didn't even know that was a song. The lady was so drunk, as you do when you go to karaoke.
You have to. You have to be.
That she started singing, and the little balls bouncing, because at the time it wasn't how the words are highlighting now, it was like bouncing ball. And she's like, whatever. And then she just starts staring off into a corner or trying to stand up straight or whatever the fuck she was doing. And the song is still going. And then she'll look, and then she would yeah. And then towards the end of the song, Janice Joplin says, Me and Bobby McGee, Me and Bobby McGee. She says it a couple of times. Well, it was like 3 or 4 times, I think, at the end of the song. And we watched the little ball bounce, and now the screen goes black. Now, all of a sudden, this fucking bitch who is drunk off her ass has this lucid moment where she's like, oh, me and Bobby McGee. And she starts screaming it, and the music is done. There's no music. Like, you've missed your fucking opportunity, bitch. And she's screaming into the microphone, me and Bobby McGee. That is the only reason I even know that Janice Joplin covered that song, but it was just fucking horrible. And she's lucky that nobody had video of that because that was fucking awful. The next one, I completely love this guy's first name, R. Lester, which I think is great. R. Lester Dyke Christian.
Oh God, that's a fantastic name. Molester Dyke, did you say?
R. Lester Dyke. So Dyke was his nickname. And I wanted to include him for a couple different reasons. He passed away on March 13th of 1971 because he was murdered. Murdered. He was, don't do that again. We're not going back to that
Please.
show. No, we beat that to death.
Okay.
Go back and listen to our past shows and you'll know he's murdered or murder.
It was murder.
You just had to get it out of your system.
I did.
Really, this whole episode is about just Zoe trying to like purge a lot of pent up energy. And so he was the lead the singer for Dyke and the Blazers. But his song, Let a Woman Be a Woman, was sampled by Tupac for his song, If My Homie Calls. But the main thing is that Prince referred to the song in one of my favorite Prince songs ever, Get Off, where he goes, where the lady in the background, let a woman be a woman.
Let a man be a man.
Yes. So Dyke was getting ready to go on tour with Barry White.
Love, the walrus of love.
Yes, he was getting ready to go on tour with Barry White, and he was shot dead in a street in Phoenix, Arizona, presumably in a drug deal gone bad. But in his short life, left quite an impression. Of course, a famous member of the 27 Club, Jim Morrison, who died July 3rd. 1971, also on my birthday, also the same day as Brian Jones. When Brian Jones had passed away, Jim Morrison started writing poetry about Brian Jones. And then literally 2 years to the day after Brian Jones of the Rolling Stone passes away, Jim Morrison is found in his bathtub dead, presumably from a heroin overdose. And there was no autopsy performed because he died in Paris and that wasn't the rule, but it's presumably from heart failure. And of course, he was the lead singer of The Doors, and he was inducted as part of The Doors into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1993. And 2 years after his death, The Doors split up. Of course, they have so many great songs, Light My Fire, Love Me Two Times, which Joan Jett, believe it or not, does a fucking fantastic cover of. Love Her Madly, which I love that. Touch Me, People Are Strange. And there's a couple really quick stories about The Doors, and I'm sure a lot of people out here have heard this. When they went on the Ed Sullivan Show, there is the line in Light My Fire, Girl, We Couldn't Get Much Higher. And the Ed Sullivan producing team told Jim Morrison of The Doors, hey, you need to change that because it alluded to, obviously, drug use, to Girl, We Couldn't Get Much Better. And so all of The Doors said, oh yeah, we're totally going to do that. And then they played two songs on it. And I believe Light My Fire was the second song that they played. And he looks defiantly in the camera, Jim Morrison, and sings the correct lyric to the song, Girl, We Couldn't Get Much Higher. And it was a whole big, fucking thing. But one of my favorite things about The Doors is that they had a song called The Celebration of the Lizard. And at the end of the song, he says, I am the Lizard King. Okay. So there is an episode of The Simpsons where Bart and Lisa are in a log ride in an amusement park, and Bart dares Lisa to drink the water, which is all, of course, filled with like fumes and gross stuff. And she does, and she gets totally fucked up, and she starts running around yelling, I am the Lizard Queen, which is a direct reference to the song Celebration of the Lizard. But after that, she makes one of the best quotes I've ever heard in The Simpsons, where Marge is trying to talk to her and she says, can't talk, coming down. And she just walks by them with a blanket over her shoulders, which I just thought was fucking hilarious. So that's my double tie-in to Jim Morrison. Then we have Linda Jones, who was a soul singer who died March 14th of 1972. She died from diabetes. Apparently she went into insulin shock, or like an insulin, yeah, like, it's whatever it's called. Like her insulin dropped, but she was sleeping. She was in between matinee and evening shows from performing at the Apollo. But her best known song, there's a song, I Can't Make It Alone, but her best known song is Dancing in the Street.
Not the Dancing in the Street.
So Dancing in the Street, for those of you, it has been covered by a number of people, including the Kinks, the Grateful Dead, Little Richard, Myra and the Struts, and of course, our favorite, David Bowie and Mick Jagger.
Sir Mick Jagger.
Sir Mick Jagger. And so we have talked about that multiple times on the show, plus put up links to the video. So she is the one that we have to thank for giving us Bowie and Mick Jagger's awful rendition of that show.
That song. You said show.
Yes. What did I say? Song.
No, you said
Okay.
show. I hate to correct you, I'm sorry.
I know you hate to correct me, but I appreciate that, even though I know you really hate that. Then we have Ron Pigpen Mccarran, who died of a hemorrhage associated with alcoholism, and he was a founding member of Grateful Dead. Grateful Dead covered Linda Jones's song "Dancing in the Streets" in 1964, and then in 1973, Ron Pigpen Mccarran. And I'm probably saying the name wrong. So all of you Grateful Dead heads, feel free to DM me, slide into our DMs and be pissed off. And he passed away. Dave Alexander, February 10th of 1975. He was a bassist for the Stooges, died of a pulmonary edema. This is a lot of, so Zoe, dealing in the type of attorney she does, she knows how to say all this shit. I don't know how to say all this shit, as you can tell clearly. He was a bassist for the Stooges. For those of you who know Iggy Pop, it started out with Iggy and the Stooges. The band Iggy and the Stooges was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2010. There's a ton of people who have referred to Iggy and the Stooges. Kurt Cobain has consistently listed in interviews that Raw Power, which is one of the Iggy and the Stooges CDs, is that it's his number one favorite album of all time. Slayer also covered Iggy and the Stooges, had a song, "I Want to Be Your Dog," and Slayer covered it on their 1996 cover album, Undisputed Attitude, renaming it "I'm Gonna Be Your God." The Sex Pistols also covered the Stooges, Iggy and the Stooges, regularly in songs "No Fun," "Search and Destroy," "Shake Appeal," and "I Want to Be Your Dog." And it is said that the love of the Stooges band by itself is what brought the Ramones together to form the Ramones. Then we have Pete Ham, April 24th of 1975, "Suicide by Hanging." And he was the keyboardist and leader of the band Badfinger. And so they had a lot of their songs that were co-written by members of the Beatles. We had "Come and Get It," written and produced by Paul McCartney in 1970. "No Matter What." We had "Day After Day," which was produced by George Harrison in 1971. "Baby Blue," produced by Todd Rundgren, which we talked about. "Hello, It's Me," that fucking awful song. And they also, 2 decades later, they helped do a number one for Mariah Carey that went to number one in the UK. Then there is Gary Thane, who died December 8th, 1975 of a heroin overdose. And he was the former bassist of Uriah Heep. Jacob Miller died March 23rd, 1980, and him and one of his sons were driving in Jamaica, and they died in a car crash together. There's other people in the vehicle, but just specifically those died. He was also a vocalist for the band Inner Circle, which is a reggae band.
Oh,
but
yeah. I remember them.
best known for which song, Zoe?
I'll know it. Give me one word.
Bad Boys.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boy, bad boy.
Correct. So Inner Circle is best known for that one, and he passed away. And then the last one on my list, and I'm going to say it wrong, is Peter Defridis, who died June 14th, 1989 from a motorcycle crash. And he was a member of Echo and the Bunnymen, which a lot of my new age 80s babies will remember for their biggest song, Stateside, which was "Lips Like Sugar." So this is going to be a very good Spotify playlist, ranging a big range of different artists. And so with that, take it away, Zoe.
I shall. Now, just to make it clear that if you go on Wikipedia, it will have the full list of every member of the 27 Club. We're not talking about every single member here because we'd be here for 4 hours. And much as we love to chat for hours on end, I'm sure we'd lose you all. So we have just picked some of the main musicians.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are watching it on YouTube, I have makeup under my eyes like a raccoon starting because I've been working all fucking day. So yes, we're abbreviating this for sure.
Sure. So the first one I get to talk about is probably one of the most famous members of the 27 Club, and that's Kurt Cobain. He was a founding member, lead singer, guitarist, songwriter of Nirvana. And like I said, probably one of the most famous members of this club, often named as the spokesman of our generation, meaning Generation X. Famously married to Courtney Love. They shared a child, Frances Bean Cobain. Many conspiracy theories surrounding his death, which we'll talk about in a second. He struggled with heroin addiction and depression, but he did leave a suicide note, although there was some discussion about that. He died on April the 5th, 1994, from a gunshot wound to the head. His body was found 3 days after his death by an electrician. According to Celebrity Net Worth, his net worth was $50 million at his death. He died intestate, which, as you'll know from our previous episode, this means he died without a will. So, which meant that everything went to his wife at the time, Courtney Love. Apparently in 2004, Courtney Love found out that people who had been managing Cobain's estate, Cobain's estate had stolen $30 million in cash and $500 million apparently in real estate, but she didn't sue or do anything about it. Now, according to several sources that I read, including CNBC and The Things, Cobain's estate now is valued at $450 million. Now, Larry Mestel, who's the CEO of Primal Wave, held the publishing rights to a large portion of Nirvana's catalog from 2006 to 2013 after purchasing the rights from Love in a deal estimated to be worth $50 million. Like I said before, because he died intestate, Love was his primary beneficiary of the publishing rights as his widow. And the estate included 98% of the publishing right to Nirvana's music. Primary Wave held 50% of those publishing rights and before they divested their rights to BMG, which we've talked about in other episodes before, and which they bought in $150 million deal. Now, in 2010, Courtney Love reportedly relinquished all rights to Cobain's name and likeness for a $2.75 million loan from the trust fund of Frances Bean. And then Frances took control of the trust fund that year when she turned 18. And that trust fund represented more than 1/3 of his estate. In 2014, Nirvana's record sales were estimated to be worth $4.4 million. Love's net worth is now apparently $100 million. And like I said, his net worth now is apparently around $450 million. So that's Kurt Cobain for you.
And I'm going to jump in here real quick. So
Sure.
On episode 335, we just talked about AI. We talked about them making new music with Kurt Cobain, and also just a loose tie-in, Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl, I Don't Know You Anything. He was specifically, he had a couple verses and they're very poignant towards Courtney Love, and it was a very ruthless time. Seattle went into super duper morning. I basically Western Washington, to be fair.
Right. Now, ironically, sadly, the next person on the list after Kurt Cobain is Kristen Pfaff, who was the bass guitarist for Hole, and Courtney Love was the lead singer with Hole. She was from Minnesota. She died on June the 16th, 1994 from a heroin overdose. She was inducted into the Buffalo Music Hall of Fame posthumously. Her mother celebrated that in her absence. According to idolnetworth.com, her net worth is around $10 million, but some of these sources are really hard to check. So you've got to take some of them with a pinch of salt. Now, the next person on my list is Richie Edwards. And this is a really interesting story. He was a lyricist and guitarist for the Manic Street Preachers. Now, this was a huge Welsh band in the 90s in Great Britain. He died, well, he was presumed dead on February 1st, 1995. He went missing and his car was found near a common suicide site. And so he was presumed dead. He was declared dead in absentia on November 24th, 2008. Now, in the United Kingdom, a missing person can be declared legally dead after 7 years, but his family waited 13 years, and his parents finally took the difficult decision, they said, to sort out his affairs. They weren't accepting he was dead. They just needed to, sort out his financial affairs. Again, he left no will. His estate was reportedly worth just under £500,000, which is about $692,000, but about £380,000 or $525,000 after the death duties had been paid. Now, even in 2005, the rest of the Manic Street Preachers, were still paying 25% of the royalties into a bank account bearing his name. They weren't accepting he was dead either. Now, Richie Edwards was initially a driver and a roadie for the band, but he then became the main spokesman and the fourth member of the band in 1989. He apparently didn't actually have that much real musical talent, but his real contribution was his lyrics and the style that he gave the band. The most popular album of the Manic Street Preachers was Everything Must Go in 1996, which I have it. It's a great album. Richie suffered severe depression. He would self-harm. 2 weeks before he disappeared, he started withdrawing £200 a day from his bank account. And on the day he disappeared, he was supposed to fly to America with another band member to promote an album. But like I said, his car was found abandoned near the Severn Bridge, which is a well-known suicide site. And it's widely believed that he jumped from the bridge, but his body was never found. There were numerous sightings, especially in the first few years after he went missing, all around the world. But as I said, he's been legally declared dead and his body has never been found. So it's a sad but pretty interesting story. Next on my list is Stretch, who is an American rapper whose real name was Randy Walker. He died November 30th, 1995. He was murdered. In the 90s, he was in Tupac's group Thug Life. He was apparently on his way to a Biggie Smalls event when he was shot in a drive-by shooting. Next on my list is Fat Pat.
Real quickly, that's crazy. So ties into Tupac and to Biggie, who were also both murdered. That's nuts.
Yeah, nuts. Fat Pat was next on my list. He was a rapper, a member of Screwed Up Click. His real name was Patrick Lamarck Hawkins. He died on February 3rd, which is my birthday, 1998. Again, he was murdered. He went to a promoter's apartment to collect his appearance fee, and the promoter wasn't there, and he was shot in a corridor outside the apartment. And then sadly, 8 years later, his brother, Big Hawk, was also shot to death. My next on my list is Freaky Tar, whose birth name was Tarlik Raymond Rogers. He was another rapper and a member of the Lost Boys. He died March 28th, 1999. He was also murdered. He was shot in a case of mistaken identity.
Oh, that fucking sucks.
Yep. Next on my list is Kami, whose full name was Ukyo Kamimura. He was a drummer for Malice Mizer, a Japanese musician. He died June 21st, 1999. He died in his sleep of a subarachnoid hemorrhage. So very, very sad. Right, next on my list is an Argentine singer of cuarteto music. His name was Rodrigo Alejandro Bueno. His nickname was Rodrigo or El Potro. He was considered one of the most influential and famous and best singers of that type of music in Argentina. He died June 24th, 2000. He died in a car accident. Apparently, he was leaving a restaurant. He was kind of a vehicle was in his way. He lost his temper, tried to get past this vehicle and hit a barrier. Neither he nor his passenger were wearing seatbelts. They were ejected and they died instantly. Jesus. And then followed a big dispute about his estate. His mother claimed to be the owner of his recorded material and profits. His assets were frozen by the courts during the dispute. DNA tests were carried out to prove the paternity of one of the children. He already had a daughter by his first marriage. He had a second marriage, and there was a purported son, and it was proved that he was the father of that son. And in the meantime, while all this was going on, his brother emptied his bank account of $300,000. Then there were arguments over his burial, and his body wasn't. That took 5 years to resolve. Oh. So just an absolute mess, which shows you what happens if you don't make a will. Next on my list is Sean Patrick Mccabe. He was the lead singer of Ink and Dagger. He died August 28th, 2000 of asphyxiation. Now, Ink and Dagger were a hardcore punk band from Philadelphia who incorporated references to vampires in their music, painted their faces, and played with fake blood. Sean was found dead in a motel room in Indiana. Next, we have Maria Serrano. She was a background singer for Passion Fruit, which was a Euro dance bubblegum band. Don't know what bubblegum means.
All of those words sound horrible together.
Yes, but Euro dance, I think that just kind of sums it up right there. Now, she died November 24th, 2001 in a plane crash. The band was on a plane from Berlin to Zurich when it crashed into some hills. When it landed short of the runway. 2 of the band members died, as well as another vocalist from a different band. One of the other band members survived with serious injuries, and 8 other people on the plane survived. Next on my list is Brian Otterson, guitarist for American Head Charge. Now, they were an industrial metal band from Minneapolis. Brian died April 19th, 2005 from a prescription drug overdose. He was found in the sleeping bunk on the band's tour bus in North Charleston, South Carolina. The band was set to play at the Plex Club. Now, I just had to give a shout out to the founding frontman of the band, who was called Martin Koch. Great name. Great name. Next,
I like how people we don't know are getting on lists because their names are horrible or their way that they died is crazy. So we're like, oh, this is great.
Oh, yeah. We don't know who you are, but you either died crazy or you had a strange name. Next on my list is Valentin Elizalde, a Mexican banda singer nicknamed El Gallo de Oro. I'm sure I'm crucifying that, or the Golden Rooster. He died November 25th, 2005. He was murdered. He was gunned down in his car shortly after leaving a concert along with his chauffeur and assistant. And it was widely believed he was killed due to the fact that a lot of his songs had anti-drug trafficking
lyrics.
Yeah, lyrics. Mm-hmm. So next on my list is Damien Damo Morris. He was a member of an Australian deathcore band called the Red Shore that was formed in 2004. He died December 19th, 2007 in a bus crash. The band's minibus veered off a highway on the east coast of Australia, crashing and killing the lead singer Damo, as well as their roadie, driver, merchandise man, Andy Milner. The band carried on without him with a new singer for a few years, but eventually broke up in 2011. Next is someone with a local feel for us, Orish Grinstead. She was a founding member of R&B group 702. She founded the group with her twin sister Irish Grinstead, her oldest sister Lamisha Grinstead, and friend Camila Williams. The group was founded in Las Vegas in mid-1990s. They were discovered by actor and comedian Sinbad, and they were named after our area code 702. She died April 20th, 2008 from kidney failure. The group had sold over 500,000 units worldwide, and they had hits with Where My Girl's At. Apparently she'd suffered from cancer and other undisclosed illnesses.
So young.
Yep. Next one on I've got to talk about is another legendary member of this club, Amy Winehouse. So she is, was of course, English singer and songwriter, and she died July 23rd, 2011 of alcohol poisoning. I think we can all agree that she had a one-of-a-kind voice and eclectic mix of musical genres. Her debut album, Frank, was released in 2003 to critical acclaim in the UK and was nominated for a Mercury Prize. Her song off that album, Stronger Than Me, won the Ivor Novello Award for Best Contemporary Song from the British Academy of Songwriters, Composers and Authors. Her follow-up album, Back to Black, was released in 2006 to international success and was one of the best-selling albums in UK history. She won her second Ivor Novello Award for Rehab. At the 50th Grammy Awards in 2008, she won 5 awards, becoming the first British woman to win 5 Grammys. Now, we all know that she was plagued by drug and alcohol addiction, and she had a turbulent relationship with Blake Fielder Civil, whom she later married. After her death, Back to Black temporarily became UK's best-selling album of the 21st century. Now, according to the list, her estate was worth about $6.7 million at the time of her death, $4.6 million after taxes. And again, she left no will. She had divorced Fielder Civil in 2009, so everything went to her parents.
Oh, and he was such a cockbag.
Oh, yeah. So I'm glad. And so was her father, who blamed her.
He was, the dad was a cockbag.
Oh, the dad was?
Her father, Amy Winehouse's father?
Yeah, I know. I've watched the documentary about it, but he was not as much of a cockbag as Blake was.
I agree with that.
Her final recording before her death was a collaboration with Tony Bennett, Body and Soul, and she died 2 months before its release. It topped the charts and won a Grammy, and the sales of that from that single were donated to the Amy Winehouse Foundation, which was a charity that was set up to help young people with drug and alcohol addictions. So I've just got 2 more that I'm going to talk about. Next one is Kim Jong Hyun, who's a South Korean artist who is the main vocalist and lyricist for a K-pop group, SHINee, who then went on to become a solo artist. He died December 18th, 2017 by suicide from carbon monoxide poisoning. He rented an apartment for 2 days, sent a number of messages to his sister and a suicide note to fellow singer Nine of band Dear Cloud. His sister became concerned and sent help, and he was found unconscious. His death was linked to depression. His net worth in 2021 was apparently $10 million, according to otakukart.com. This website also stated that all royalties since his death have gone to his mother, and that she set up a foundation called the Shinin Foundation to help young people and artists who suffer from stress and mental health issues. And the last one on my list that we're going to talk about is Frido Santana, aka Derrick Coleman. He was an American rapper from Chicago who was the older cousin of Chicago rapper Chief Keef. He died January 19, 2018 from a seizure. He appeared in one of Drake's music videos. His debut album, Trappin' Ain't Dead, featured guest appearances by Kendrick Lamar and Chief Keef. He was heavily into drugs and had seizures in the past, but he was found unresponsive by his girlfriend in the home after suffering a fatal seizure. As of 2015, he had total earnings of $4 million and estimated net worth of $1 million when he died. And the last thing that I was just wanted to talk about was there is a show at the Virgin Hotel here in Las Vegas called 27, where there are performers that do covers by members of the 27 Club. And I just wanted to give a shout out to them. John Arthur Bigham does covers by Robert Johnson. Lee Capelli is Amy Winehouse. Nazim Chambi is Jimi Hendrix. Gabe Masker is Kurt Cobain. Toby Rand is Jim Morrison. And Adi Argalazi is Janice Joplin. And it's been touted as a musical adventure honoring music icons gone too soon at the age of 27. The show's on Wednesdays through Sundays at 8:30 p.m. and tickets start at $65. Now, neither Mel or I have seen the show, but one of our good mutual friends has, and she says it is fab. So worth checking out.
And that is one of the things that spurred the desire to do the 27 Club. Hopefully we won't ever have to do this again and our musicians will stay alive. So with that, we thank you for listening. Follow us on social media at Finances, the Other F Word. Follow Lily Lou Mittens on Instagram. And of course, my book, Finances, the Other F Word, Another F Word to Love, is available online, multiple places. We appreciate you guys for listening. Check us out on Kill Pop, Kick-Ass Radio Station. And with that, I think we're out this bitch.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening. Please check back for upcoming episodes and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Finances, the Other F Word.